drawn before, only there's no more average variable cost curve because everything's variable cost. So what has to be true if the firm's curves look like that? It has both increasing returns to scale and decreasing returns to scale, right? So this firm here has an area of output where it has increasing returns to scale, and then once it goes past this point right here, it starts having decreasing returns to scale. So I draw it through a U-shaped long-run total cost curve, which doesn't have to be the case for all firms, but it's more common than not. But where at low areas of production or low ranges of production, you have increasing returns to scale. So here you have increasing returns to scale, and here you have decreasing returns to scale. And this is a little bit fuzzy mathematically, actually. I don't want to get into it, but there's an area to the left of a fuzzy discontinuity here that has increasing returns to scale, and an area to the right that has decreasing returns to scale. So if you see U-shaped cost curves in the long run, that's what's happening. Okay. I brought good notes today, so I don't miss stuff. Because I sometimes walk out of here and I forgot to tell you guys something and I have to shove it in later. So it's a new day. Okay. So what I want to think about is my favorite concept in all of economics, because I came up with it. Actually, I didn't come up with it. There's a guy named Le Chatelier who came up with it, but I've rebranded Le Chatelier's principle into the yoga theorem, which sounds much cooler, because my French pronunciation frankly sucks. But the point here is I want to, again, figure out what's the benefit from a firm of being able to act more flexibly, right? In the long run, you can adjust both labor and capital, versus in the short run, you can only adjust labor. So in the long run, the firm can adjust its plant size, right, capital, to minimize its long run cost of producing a given quantity, versus in the short run, it can't do that. So more flexibility generally has to be better for the firm, right? So the more flexibility, the less pain you're going to have in your yoga lesson. So what I'm going to argue, and what I'm going to show you in a minute, is that the short run cost is greater than or equal to the long run cost. So your cost of producing a given output at best in the short run can be equal to the long run cost, but they can't be lower than the long run cost. All right? So let's ignore that last bullet, and that'll become apparent when I start drawing this thing. And this will be not the craziest picture yet, that comes later. But let's talk about expansion of production again, but let's talk about expansion of production in the long run versus in the short run. So let's think about your boss walking into your office again, and she says that you have 100 units right here. Right? And let's pick some input price combination that gets you a tangency. I want it to be roughly here. So you want it to be a little bit to the bottom right here. Like this, roughly. Okay, so you're producing currently using 7.5 units of labor and 3.2 units of capital. Why did I write this out? I want to write K star here. All right. Can you produce those 100 units at a cost lower than whatever the label of this isocost line is? No way, right? This is the last isocost curve. I mean, there's a little space here, but that's what I can't draw properly, but let's assume this is an actual tangency here. This is the lowest isocost curve you can get on and still produce 100 units. It doesn't matter whether you're in the short run or in the long run. This is the optimal combination of labor and capital to produce 100 units. You're minimizing costs. That's the exact picture we drew last time for cost minimization. Now your boss walks in again and says, yo, Max, 200 units. Can we do it? I'm a can-do kind of guy, all right? But I also take my economics seriously, so I say, boss, short run or long run? She says, give me both options, all right? So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to figure out what it's going to cost me to produce 200 units in the long run versus expanding production to 200 units in the short run. Now, the easy thing to do is to figure out what it is in the long run, right? I take my isocost curve, I shift it out parallel, and I figure out what the tangency is. And my long run, this is LLR, amount of optimal labor, and my long run optimal amount of capital, KLR, are these two. Right? So now I'm going to increase my amount of capital, and I'm going to increase my amount of labor. And what I've got now is I've got 2 points on my long-run expansion path. Right? I could do this for different quantities, and I could, again, draw my long-run expansion path through here. I'm just going to sketch it instead of messing this picture up more. So let's say the long-run expansion path looks something like this. I'm not drawing it as a straight line because there's nothing that says this thing has to be a straight line. So this is my long-run expansion path right here. It's supposed to go right through this point, but I don't see it on my left eye. Okay, that's long run. Now you got to figure out the short run. What we know about the short run is we can't adjust capital, right? So we're stuck with our initial amount of K star units of capital. So what's my short run expansion path look like? It's just, I can start at K star, and I can go left, and I can go right, but I have to stay horizontal here. Okay, so this black line right here, this is my short run expansion path. Because the only combinations of capital and labor I can choose are ones that contain K star units of capital. Okay, so I can go from here to the left if I want to reduce production, or I can go from my initial point horizontally to the right if I want to increase production. So in the short run, what's the combination of capital and labor that I'm going to use to produce 200 units? Well, it's K star units of capital with enough labor to get me out to the 200 unit isoquant right here. So the short run expansion of production right here, this here is LSR, and K star is now also KSR. Right? So in the long run, you would move from this point right here by shifting out your isocost curve until you tangent to the 200 unit isoquant and use this combination of labor, LLR, and capital, KLR. You're increasing both. Versus in the short run, if you're expanding production, you can only move horizontally. So you're going out here. You're producing using your original level of capital, K star, and now this massive amount of additional labor, LSR. Now, Max said, that's got to be more expensive, right? Can you show using the tools that you know that this is more expensive? And the answer is yes, you can, right? How? It's a beautiful thing. How do we know what any given point on this nice plane costs? We draw the isocost curve that goes through that point, and we know that isocost curves further away from the origin are more expensive than isocost curves closer to the origin. Right? So I'm going to shift out parallel until I get an isocost curve that goes through this nice black dot right here. Can you see that one? Yeah, that's visible, right? It goes right through here. That isocost curve here, if I could look at its actual label right here, it's going to have a higher dollar amount on it, let's say $220, compared to the one that goes through the long run optimal bundle, right? Because that isocost curve, I maybe should have drawn it in red, but I got fancy. So that isocost curve that goes through the long run expansion bundle right here is further away from the origin than the one that goes through the long run expansion bundle. Because you're further away, on an isoclass further away from the origin, the cost of expanding production in the short run is higher than the cost of expanding production in the long run. Now, intuitively, why is this the case? And by the way, looks like a straightforward picture to draw when I do it. When you try and do it, it'll take a little bit of practice. So this is a good one to practice. But intuitively, why does that have to be the case? Well, in the short run expansion, what I'm doing is I'm using the wrong level of capital, right? I could use a better level of capital to produce 100 units, which is the long run, overall, lowest cost possible ever, even if you're Captain Jean-Luc Picard after 3 cups of Earl Grey tea cost, right? This is Star Trek Next Generation reference. That's way above most people's heads because you guys were born in the 90s. But the point here is, no, you weren't. 80? 9? Yeah, that's right, it's 2015. Holy cow. I had long hair in the 90s. Okay, but the point here is you're using the wrong level of capital in the sense that you could reduce your cost of production by using the optimal overall lowest cost level of capital if you were allowed to adjust capital. But you're not. There's a binding constraint, which is like your hamstring in yoga, meaning the capital level you've got is constrained and you're not allowed to move to the optimal level. So you're using the wrong level of capital in the short run expansion. So expanding production in the short run is generally more expensive than expanding production in the long run. All right? So that's expansion of production short run versus long run. Here comes the crazy picture. Maybe you should just watch it, right? Because it's pretty awesome to see Max mess up on this one. All right. What I'm going to draw you is I'm going to draw your short run average cost curve for producing Q1 units of output. So on the x-axis here I have output, on the y-axis I have dollars. So what I want to figure out is the minimum cost of producing Q1 units of output in the short run, okay? So now I'm going to pick the level of capital that minimizes the cost of production in the short run using K1 units of capital. So this is a short run average cost curve. The lowest average cost of producing that amount of output here, Q1, is this point right here. Now if your boss walks in and says, well, what about Q2? Well, if you're stuck with K1 units of capital in the short run, this would be the average cost of production, using that wrong level of capital. But if you say, wait, boss, let's not destroy the labor force, let's plan for the long run, and let's invest in the right level of capital, and in the long run adjust to the right capital labor ratio right here, and I can produce this for you in the long run at this here, short run average cost 2. We're going to have a little bit more capital, right? But look at it. I can produce for you, if you let me adjust capital, on this lower point right here compared to if you let me stick to producing the higher output with a given amount of capital, right? So this is the short run average cost with the original low level of capital. This is the short run average cost with the now higher level of capital. You can keep on playing this, right? What about Q3? Well, we could produce this with the wrong level of capital, or we could, I want to get this straight here because there's an intuition check in a second here. Or we could use the right level of capital and use short run average cost 3 with K3 units of capital and produce at this level. Q4, I'm only going to do 2 more. You guys are paying attention. I love stuff like that. Really, man? You're going to draw another average cost curve? Nothing makes me more excited. Okay, Q5, right? We can keep on going. And this is short run average cost curve 5 with K5 units of capital. Right, so these are the different short run cost curves for different levels of capital. Right, each short run cost curve is the optimal long run cost for 1 unit of output. Right, so short run average cost 1 here, right here, gives me the minimum average cost for using Q1 units. This one right here has the exact right level of capital to produce Q2 units of output at minimum average cost. This one right here gets me the right amount of capital to produce Q3 units at minimum cost, Q4 units, Q5 units of minimum cost. So the long run average cost curve is, of course, the minimum average cost curve, or the right average cost curve for producing any given level of output with the optimal level of capital in the long run. So it's something called the envelope, meaning you just connect all of these points right here. Right, this here is my long run average cost curve, big dots right here. Just connects all these points. Right, so here, what I've drawn for you is a long run average cost curve that's flat. What do I know about a long run average cost curve that's flat? Oh, I found money. $3. Who needs $3? In the back. Oh, I'll give you a 5 for that one, because you didn't even hesitate. All right, here you go. Would you mind passing this through, please? Enjoy your lunch. Not that you can buy lunch for $5 anymore, but hey. So what he said is that since the long run average cost curve is flat, right, this means constant returns to scale. So if I go back a couple of slides, that's my long run average cost curve. It's flat. Right? If we had increasing or decreasing returns to scale, these short run average cost curves would line up in a way that we would have a salad bowl shape, right? So this one would be shifted up higher, this a little bit lower, this one would dip, this one higher, and this one higher again. So where these short run cost curves fall, that determines what the shape of your long run average cost curve looks like, and that is simply governed by returns to scale. So in the long run, what tells you the shape of the long run average cost curve is really returns to scale, right? I'm just looping back to where we started, but connecting it in this nice graph here where you're connecting the short run average cost to the long run average cost right here, right? It's about using the right or the wrong level of capital for a given level of output. All right, let's talk about Leo for a second. People always think that dropping average costs has something to do with technological progress. And that's certainly true to a certain degree, right? As time goes on, we get better at doing stuff. That is different from the reason that I have a U-shaped or a dropping or an increasing long run average cost curve. The long run average cost curve is a static concept. It's at one point in time. Given current knowledge of production, what does my production technology look like? Technological progress is a different thing altogether because technological progress happens over time. It's not at a snapshot in time. So who here saw The Aviator? Leo! Right? Kate Blanchett, great movie. If you haven't seen it, you should watch it. I loved it. So Hughes was obsessed with flight, right? He basically flew everything that you could fly. There's some really amazing scenes in there. But then at some point, he wanted a contract for a military transporter that was built entirely out of wood, right? An airplane built out of wood. And we could have history lessons about why that was the case, but I don't have time for it. Watch the movie. So he built this massive plane. Well, he didn't build it. He had someone design this massive, massive plane built entirely out of, I think it was probably spruce wood, right? That's why it was called the spruce goose. It was built out of wood. Massive plane, transport machinery and troops. So the first time you do something, how good are you at it? Anybody here, do your parents force you to learn piano? You suck terribly the first time, right? Violin's even worse. So my kid wants he wants the Flying V air guitar, so when we go to Guitar Center, that's the one he wants, and I think I'm getting it for his birthday because that's an awesome guitar. And he'll stop playing it after a week, and then I'll get it. But the point here is, this is basic economics, right? The first time you do something, you're just not very good at it. So, for example, in graduate school, I was charged with building a computer lab. I went to graduate school in the University of California system, so every dollar was turned around 4 times before it was spent, which is the way it should be done. But they were like, okay, Max, you get to build the computer lab of your dreams to serve a graduate student population of about 100. Here's $5,000. I was like, wow, thanks. So we bought a whole bunch of processors and cheat cases and motherboards and things like that, and we were charged with building the first 15 computers for $5,000. It was a challenge. We did it. Some of them caught on fire because we overclocked them. They were awesome. But the point here is, I never built a computer before, so I went on the internet and I figured out how to do it. It's a little bit like Legos, but it took a long time to do it, right? Because you don't know how to build the first 10. Then when they came around and said, Max Alkhammer, you did such a nice job building this computer lab that caught on fire, we want you to also build the experimental lab computers. So we said, sure, we'll do it. So the first 10 computers we built, right, took nearly a week until they were up and running with operating systems installed and connected and had keyboards. It turns out you need to budget for keyboards if you ever have to do that. The second ones we built took exactly half the time, right? Because what happens, right, when you do something the second time? You learn something, right? You learn something, how to put things together. You're more effective at building things. You don't do stupid mistakes. You figure out the optimal way of doing things. So the amount of time you spend doing something or the amount of material wasted building something is simply less. So the way we think about this in economics, very, very simplistically, there are much more fancy models than this, is a concept called learning by doing. So if you have your dollars and your output right here, if you have a firm, you can even pick one here. This is increasing returns to scale, right? Average cost the first time you build the Spruce Goose or a computer lab or whatever it is you're doing, average costs are pretty high because you haven't allocated your labor efforts correctly. You're still wasting a lot of material. You're making mistakes. But the second time you do this, you've learned, and your average costs have dropped. And this drop in average costs is something we call learning by doing, right? But this is a sequential drop in time, right? So there's a first time of doing something and there's a second time of doing something. Versus when we looked at average cost in a static framework here, you have one average cost curve that's fixed over time. That average cost may shift down, or in some settings it may shift up over time. But learning by doing says you learn something, and that makes your costs drop. This is a really cool area of inquiry. One of our most distinguished graduate students from our program, Ryan Kellogg, he got tenure in 3 years at Michigan, which is really incredible. Nobody gets tenure in 3 years. He wrote his job market paper on learning by doing in the Texas oil patch, right? So when people go drilling in fields, do firms that drill the same field repeatedly get better at drilling, do firms and so on and so on and so on. But what I'm saying here is, this is one of these simplistic concepts right here, but measuring how big of a deal this is in terms of changes in average cost is actually something of great interest to industry. Okay, so learning by doing. Now, let's get to the big questions, all right? So I don't know if we have enough time to get to the end of it, but I'm going to try. So the question I sort of said I didn't answer yet is the one, well, Max, I now know if I know how much to produce, what the optimal combination of labor and capital is. I'm comfortable with that in the short run and in the long run. But I still don't know how much output a firm should produce, right? Should this company that produces these location tiles produce 100,000, 200,000, 500,000, a million, or 10? How do firms decide this? So in order for firms to decide how much output to produce, they have to ask a couple of questions, right? And we're going to pick some answers in order to answer that big question. And we're going to look at the answer to this question in different settings. So the first thing the firm has to look at is how much does it cost to produce different things, right? So how much does it cost to produce such a tile? So if it costs, I don't know, $5 to produce one tile, $5.50 to produce the next, $6 to produce the next, what's the marginal and average cost of production of my product here? So the cost function matters. How much can I sell at any given price? Or in the words that a marketer would understand, what's the demand for my product, right? So if you go to San Francisco, the town of fancy, I was at a shopping mall, which is my least favorite place in the entire world. I have some fancy shopping mall downtown, and there's a watch store, and I was waiting with my kid, and we looked at watches, and then we talked about time, and infinity was awesome. But in the window, I saw a cell phone by a company I'd never recognized. I forget what the number was, but it was way north of $10,000 for a cell phone. And it wasn't even that fancy. It wasn't even made by Apple, okay? So I was just like, wow, and I walked in, and I was like, is there a demand for this $10,000 cell phone? And the person with one raised eyebrow said, of course, sir. So, apparently there's a company that produces $10,000 cell phones, and there's a market for it. But what you have to ask yourself is, for the product, right, that I'm producing, what are people willing to pay for it? And ultimately, how does that relate to the cost of production, right? If people are willing to pay $2 for something that costs you $20,000 to make, probably not a good idea to make that product. And we will formalize this. Then, more importantly, what you have to look at is market structure. Market structure seems one of these intimidating words, but it's actually not so intimidating. It's quite easy, right? So market structure depends on how many firms are selling the same product you're selling, right? So if you're a wheat farmer, how many farmers are in the market selling wheat? Right? If you are in the market for frozen yogurt, apparently everybody in Berkeley thinks they should open yet another frozen yogurt store, right? So how many other frozen yogurt stores are there in Berkeley? I don't even know how many, but too many. The other thing you want to look at is how easy is it for me to enter or other firms to enter the market or to leave the market, right? Are there huge costs to entering a market, and are there barriers to leaving the market? So if you want to build a